Okay, Tom, you just dialed in?
Hi, everybody. This is Tom.
Alright, yeah, we've got about 6 people here, so whenever you're ready, we can get started.
Okay, Kevin, just a sec. I'm just going to. Um, so we're just waiting for a few more people to arrive. Kev, is your screen active?
It should be now, yes.
Okay. So why don't I hand over sharing to you, and then I'll welcome everybody. Kevin, do you have control of the screen now?
Yeah, I should have control. You should be able to see my screen.
Yes, I'm just heading over there. Thank you very much. So I see John, Sean, Gaytu, I believe, have joined our webinar today. Thank you for joining our StockTrak Personal Finance and New Features for Fall 2018. Kev, maybe we'll wait one more minute and we can begin?
Sure.
Let's begin, Kev.
Yeah, we can get going. So this is being recorded too, so we will have something to distribute to the professors who are running a little bit late.
Great. So welcome to our webinar, everybody. Kevin Smith is going to be making the presentation today. Kevin heads up all our research activities and heads up our special projects. And he's largely responsible for most of the new features that we're going to be experiencing today. I'm Tom Reddy. I handle most of the sales here at StockTrak.com, and I'm probably the person that you would most likely see at a conference representing StockTrak. So if you go to any of the FMA conferences, the AACSB, the ACBSP, or any of the regional conferences, please pass by our booth, and I'd really be happy to meet you and chat with you. So, Kev, take it away.
All right, I will take it from here. The first thing that we want to cover is the personal finance service level that we just added, and then I'm going to go through all the new stuff that we're adding over the next couple of weeks up into the start of the semester. To get started, the personal finance service level. This is something new that we've developed for personal finance classes at the university level. If you've used StockTrak before, the biggest change is that we really simplified the trading system. So we're really opening up to U.S. stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, and bonds. But we also integrated a lot of personal finance lessons into the platform. So you can assign reading and activities to your students involving budgeting, credit, savings, investing, retirement, insurance. There's about 70 of these different kinds of activities that you can assign. We really designed it as kind of either a semester-long or a year-long project. So instead of just talking about investments for the fairly short amount of time during class that you would be covering that, you can have this going on for the entire duration of the class. So I'm going to show you exactly how it works, especially for the professors who have not used StockTrak before. So this is what it looks like when a professor logs in for the first time. What you would do is register a class just like normal, and then it starts out with asking the subject for your class. So if you choose any of the other ones, you're going to be getting basically the same kind of class as before, but the new one is if you just select personal finance. You can see here there's 2 types of personal finance service levels. One of them has it's a year-long license that lasts up to 52 weeks, but most professors use the semester-long one. That makes a lot more sense for a typical class structure. And then, just like any other class on StockTrak, you'd give it a name. This has to be unique to your class. The estimated number of students in your class. Again, you can choose whether your students need to pay at registration or do you want the university to get invoiced. For now, I'll set it to university invoice, and then the number of accounts that you expect to be in the class to be invoiced. And again, you choose the registration dates and the trading dates for your class. So the registration dates is when your students can come in and create their accounts, and the trading dates is where they would be able to actually place trades. After the trading date ends is their portfolio gets closed out. If you want to use this as part of the personal finance service level and you don't want your students to trade right away, you can set these registration dates to open right away, but then set trading start farther along in the semester when you think they should actually be starting to build their portfolio. We generally recommend leaving the trading open as long as possible, so for now I'm going to leave these to be the same as the maximum length allowed. Next, we have a little bit of information about your class. This helps us when we're trying to build new materials who we're targeting. So undergraduate, graduate, postgraduate, a short description of your class. This should appear on the registration page for your students. And then the author of the textbook. Depending on the service level you choose, there's a lot of discounts available in these textbooks for different classes. So for example, the Bodie Marcus is extremely popular for the investments classes, and students will get about a $5 off coupon if they have a Bodie Marcus book. For personal finance, I don't think that we have any coupons out right now, but choosing which textbook you have kind of helps us talk with the publishers and work those discounts in. Next, you would choose basically the rules that your students will be trading under. So again, if you're doing a regular StockTrak class, this form is going to be a lot longer, but since this is more of a basic personal finance class, it's just the currency to work with, how much cash you want to give them to start with. Most personal finance classes use smaller amounts, like $100,000 or $50,000. The minimum prices, so you can outlaw penny stocks, which is very common at all levels. Whether they can borrow money, trading on margin, whether they can short sell, day trade, and then you can also set if you as the professor want to appear in the class rankings alongside your students. Some professors like to use their account as a benchmark, others like to just leave it up to the students alone and keep their account hidden. A new rule we added last spring is called trade notes. With trade notes, all of your students will be required to take notes every time they make a trade, providing some sort of justification whether this is a good idea. In the spring, it was kind of an experimental feature. We were getting feedback, but we had overwhelmingly positive feedback, both from the students and for professors. So we recommend pretty much every class use the trade notes feature. Fill orders on daily volume. This is for liquidity. For a personal finance class, you want to set this lower. This means if a stock has a volume of 10 shares, your students can buy up to 5 shares. So it just makes it a little bit more realistic, where they can only trade what's really trading in the real markets. Next, we choose the security types and commissions. Again, for personal finance service level, we just keep it the equities, which is stocks and ETFs, mutual funds, and corporate and treasury bonds. For each of these security types, you can, of course, choose the commission structure and the position limits, so enforce some diversity. Once you have these set the way you like it, you'll just create your class. Just like any other class on StockTrak, you will get 2 demo accounts. You can also use these again if you want to do something like put benchmarks into the class rankings, or you can just leave them unused. It doesn't really change anything. This is the link that you'll give your students. They'll click this to get registered. And then this next part here is the assignments. This is where you'd add in those learning modules that I talked about earlier. We have some pre-built for you, called the Getting Started, which is basically the 10 items we think every student needs in order to understand what it means to manage a portfolio. Getting Started with Plus Personal Finance would just include everything that we have discussing personal finance. And you can also use Build My Own, where you kind of pick and choose what you want to use. For most professors, you're going to want to do the Getting Started as first, and then you'll build your own assignments after that that'll kind of line up with what you're talking about in class. So I'll choose Build My Own for now, and then I'll show you exactly how that works. So this is the place where you actually create an assignment. Under Administration, this is the Create View Assignments page. And you can have as many assignments as you want attached to your class. So you'll see here, every assignment has its own name. So I'll give this one, for example, week 1 assignment. And each assignment has its own start dates and due dates. So your students can only actually make progress on their assignments between these dates. So I'll set this one, I called it week 1 assignment, so I'll set it to be 1 week long. And then from here, you can see there's a bunch of different activities listed talking about a ton of different topics. Basically, you'll check these checkboxes if you want to make this a required activity. And most of these activities are things like reading some basic articles talking about investing in personal finance. So for example, this basic first one is called What is a Stock? This is really a glossary term. What is a stock? What does it mean to own a stock? Some really basic things like that. There's some videos embedded into it. There's tutorials on how they actually trade it, and at the very end there's a pop quiz that kind of quizzes them over what's discussed in the article. So the quizzes aren't hard. They're not designed to trick up the students. It's just did they read what's being asked of them? After they take this quiz, we'll save their grade and then we'll mark that they've done this activity. When we say saving their grade, you can choose whether or not they're allowed to retake that quiz for a higher score, or if it's going to save their first attempt to a grade book. Some other types of activities include watching tutorial videos, so the ones actually showing them how to manage their portfolio, the tutorial videos showing how the stocks trading pit works, how the bonds trading pit works, etc. And like I said, these first 10 items here, this is what would be in the Getting Started assignment, and these are the things that we recommend basically every student should know before they start making their first trade. If we look farther down at some of the other stuff that you can include, this intermediate section is usually what we recommend as the second assignment, and this really applies for every single class, not just personal finance, but investing and derivatives even too. This is, again, some more basic glossary terms to make sure students know what they're actually talking about, but it also has the tutorial videos on how do they use the limit orders, how do they use stop orders, things like that. Once you get past these first 20 items or so, then you can start choosing these items that will line up with what you would be talking about in a personal finance class. So you can see a lot of these are things like consumer rights and responsibilities. What are financial records? What makes a contract valid? Like I said, there's about 70 different activities here to choose from, like types of insurance, and then breaking it down: car insurance, rental insurance, homeowners insurance, health insurance, etc. Most of these follow the same kind of basic structure where it's an article. Sometimes there's infographics, sometimes there's videos embedded in the article, ending with a quiz. We lined these up to cover things that are in generally the same kind of order that we see in most of the college personal finance textbooks, but you can always pick and choose different items to go this week, different items to go next week, however you think works best for your class. If you're using this for the very first time, you might even want to just pick everything and then have your students kind of go through them at their own pace throughout the entire semester. It works both ways. And again, for every one of these, you can choose whether students are allowed to retry it for a higher score, or if you want to save their quiz to their grade to a grade book. After these personal finance activities, regardless of what class that you're teaching, we also have more stuff talking about career development. This involves our Career Center, where it helps your students get a feel for what they're going to need after they graduate. Certifications in the finance industry, choosing internships, taking interviews, building their resume, that kind of thing. And these also refer back to our Career Center, where we have hundreds of thousands of actual job and internship postings. We have a lot of students going through there towards the end of every semester looking for internships that are available for students using StockTrak. And you can also require your students to make certain types of trades. So you can say you need to make 10 trades this week, buying and selling at least 10 stocks. You need to use 2 limit orders, that kind of thing. Once you have this set up the way you like it, you're including all the things you want for this week, you click Create Assignment, and that's all there is to it. Now this assignment is going to be available for your students. When they logged in, they're going to be prompted that they have an assignment. It'll show them what's asked of them, and it gives them direct links to everything they need to do. As the professor, you'll also get this report card. This report card will list every single one of the students in your class. It'll show you the last time they logged in, and it'll show you how far they've come along on any assignment that you've given them. If you have multiple assignments, you'd switch between them using this simple drop down here. The details button will show you exactly what they've done in each one of these items. And you can export this entire thing to Excel, so you can use this with whatever grading record system that you want to use. We record those grades separately, so for all those quizzes with grades, there's a separate grade books button, and this would list all of the quizzes they've taken, whether or not they've finished it, and the grade they've received on the quiz. Otherwise, for the personal finance service level, there's a lot of stuff that we're building into the site specifically for students who aren't finance majors, who aren't necessarily that in tune with investing. One thing up here you can see, set up your newsletter game with what we call the Sane Bowl newsletter. This is a daily newsletter that students can opt into, which basically gives them market news every single morning. It's daily. This is written partially by our team, but mostly by students who use StockTrak in previous semesters, and they're trying to give information to newer students about what they need to know to manage their portfolio. Our tutorials videos section, we've revamped this in a lot of detail, where we made the tutorial videos a lot easier for students to follow. These trading tutorials, we also configured them to only show the security types your students are allowed to trade. So if you don't allow your students to trade options, for example, we're not going to show them options trading tutorials. But basically, we want to make this much easier for your students to get started, and we're adding in some new tutorial videos over the next few weeks that walk them through the process of placing their actual first couple of trades. Not just how to use the site, but how do you start doing the research, how do you pick a couple stocks as the fundamental of what your portfolio is going to look like to start out with. That's the basics of the personal finance service level. If you have any other questions about it or you'd like a demo of it, just let us know, and we can take this as kind of a private tour and walk you through it and how it can work with your class. So the next thing I want to talk about is some of the new stuff that we're adding for all classes over the next couple of weeks and probably up through the beginning of September. So the first and biggest thing that we're adding is cryptocurrency trading. So this is going to be a new security type. Just like options and futures are their own security type, this will be a new one called cryptocurrencies. It's not going to be available for personal finance classes, but it will be available for every other type of class. Just like all the other security types, you can turn it off or on for each class. We're going to leave it disabled by default. If you want your students to trade them, you can turn it on. We're going to have about 300 of the most popular cryptocurrencies available. We've been following the markets for the last year or so. We did a survey at the end of last semester, both for students and professors, and pretty much everybody agreed that they should be available, and that's kind of why we put them in. And when students go to actually make a trade, they'll be able to enter a quantity of the cryptocurrency they want to trade, or they can specify a dollar amount of how much they want to trade. So basically, either way they want to do it, they can. This is kind of what it's going to look like. We haven't finished the final design yet, but basically they're going to be able to buy. They'll enter the currency that they're going to want to have. There'll be a symbol lookup built into here to help them pick which currency they want to look at, the cryptocurrency they want to look at. The quantity, which they can put either as a dollar amount or as a number of shares or coins or whatever they'd like to call them. We also have a bunch of updates for all of our exchanges. So the first thing is for the futures exchanges. If your class uses futures, you're now going to get prompted when you go to create your class that the CME may request your professor contact information. This is because they want to verify that it's all being used for academic purposes. So just to see what it looks like here, when you're on your actual class creation page, you click to enable futures, you'll get this pop-up just saying that StockTrak may share your professor profile and your class rules with our data providers, the Xignite and CME group. This doesn't really change anything. We just wanted to let you know that this can happen. So far, I don't think they've made any inquiries, but they just reserve the right to do so. We're also adding several new international exchanges, Mumbai, Tokyo, Budapest, Brazil, Thailand, New Zealand, Jakarta. We recently also added Milan and Shenzhen. So most of these will use end-of-day data, but they will be available for your students if you're using it in any kind of international trading classes. And we are adding a lot of new stuff for students. So for a lot of these, I don't have anything to show you yet because our designers haven't finished the mocks, but we expect them to all be finished and live on the site by the end of August. So the biggest, or the simplest ones is a new student set of data on their account balances page. So we're going to show them a sum of all the dividends they've received and all the commission charges they paid to their portfolio summary. So for your students, their portfolio summary is under My Portfolio, and this is basically where we just show them a bunch of different metrics about what their portfolio has done. It's just going to be a couple new items on this page. If you use if you charge commissions based on a percentage amount, those commissions can add up very quickly, and we added this report in specifically because students were having trouble keeping track of everything there. A new student report, their transaction history will be able to filter, so they'll be able to just see all their dividends, just see all the splits, just see all the buyouts, basically separating the corporate actions out from the trades that they've already made. This is going to make it a lot easier for your students who are doing kinds of dividend portfolios. They'll be able to see exactly where all those took place, and if for some reason any of them were ever missed, we can get them rectified a lot faster. The daily newsletter for students, I already mentioned that one. Basically, it's entirely optional for your students. We'll give a couple prompts throughout the semester, but it's up to them if they want to receive it or not. And the new tutorial videos I also mentioned already. The last option is updated privacy settings. So when your students go to register, we do ask them some demographic information. Basically what we've changed over the summer is your students can opt out of answering almost any of that, including not even leaving an email address. So if you have any classes that have high school students that are under 16, we won't ask them anything by default because we just don't want to store any personal information from minors. But if they're over 18, they will be able to opt out from almost all of those questions that we ask at registration. There's also a couple more professor tools that are coming. The first and biggest one is a new class rule. This is going to be called public portfolios. Basically, currently right now on your professor admin reports, you have this tab called rankings, which lists all the students in your class along with basically their portfolio value and this view more button. This view more button will show you all their open positions, trades, account balances, things like that. With public portfolios, you can put this view more button on your students rankings page. So your students will be able to see all of each other's trades, open positions, transactions, things like that. Again, this is going to be off by default, but you will be able to turn it on to let your students see each other's portfolios. More help and description throughout the class creation process. Some professors were having trouble getting their classes actually started. So one thing we did is when you go to create your class, the first thing you'll see here, this step 1, it's actually explaining what these items are. And otherwise, for all of these class rules, we're adding some descriptions to make it perfectly clear what each and every one of these rules do for your class. So it's just another helping you know how to manage your class. And you'll also see on the class creation page there's this live support. This goes right to our support desk. You can just chat with them if you have any questions about what anything here does. Student trading diary updates. I mentioned that one where it worked. It had rave reviews last spring, and so we're basically going to we're going to have that. Whether or not trade notes are required, that'll be defaulting to yes for the fall. You can still turn it off if you want to make that optional for your class, but by default it's going to be turned on. And the Forex trading pit that we have on the site, this is getting some updates as well. So let me see if I can switch back to my default professor account. We started over last year updating our spots trading pit to include Forex. So you can see here we have Forex as beta. It's going to start defaulting to making Forex the default trading pit for the currencies. And we're going to be removing Bitcoin from the Forex trading pit as we add Bitcoin into the new cryptocurrency trading pit. So we didn't find any issues while we were testing this as a beta testing with all the students who were interested in using it in the spring. So it's going to be the default currency trading pit in the fall. So that's all of the new stuff I have to go over. Does anyone have any other questions for us?
With all the assignments, are those self-graded, and are points set, or is it percentages? How does all that work?
Yeah, they're all self-graded. So the quizzes, it's all built into it. So I think I did set up an assignment here. Let me check my... So I'm going to create this assignment just to show you how it works. From a student's perspective, they'll go to this assignments page, they'll see the assignment exists, the items that are required of them, how many they need to do, how many they've finished, whether or not they're allowed to retry those quizzes. And when they go to take it, all the questions are built in. There's nothing you need to worry about with them. And as soon as they submit the quiz, it's going to grade it, show them what their score was, and go back to the assignments page to show them how much, what their grade was. You as the professor will also get the, I can't remember which class I just set that up on. But you in your assignment page of the professor, you'll also see how that, what each student got for each item. There's no real intervention you need to do. It's just going to list basically everything you've asked of them. Oh, I think I set that up on my test account, but here we go, where it shows that the task was completed, and it's going to show their grade too.
And when you allow a retry, can they just take it as many times as they want until they get 100, or is it only one more retry?
No, they can retry it as many times as they want. And I see you just
Perfect.
asked, are the questions random? The questions are not random. It's going to be the same questions for each time they take it.
Okay.
So if you do want, we do change up the questions every once in a while. We also search regularly to see if any students are sharing these answer keys. But generally speaking, the quizzes aren't designed to be hard. They're not designed to be tricky in any way. We want the students to get 100% on them. The reason you can turn off retries is basically if you want to just give them a grade for giving it their best shot, or if you really want them to just retry it consistently. Are there any more questions?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi. Yes, I'm going to teach personal finance in the fall. So I noticed that some of the, I think in the screen, that we are seeing now, like it seems there's no videos, right, for those topics, right? Like you can read the article, you can take the quiz, but there's no video, something for those topics, right?
We've been adding videos. They get added probably every couple of weeks. We add a new one. So, for example, in the What are the Stocks article, this one is an article, but it ends with a video as well that covers basically the same content. So right near the end here is where we have the video embedded.
Yeah, right. But I'm talking about, like, if you go back to the previous screen and you scroll down, like, okay, so they talk about, for example, like using credits, what makes a contract valid, preparing for retirement. So for all these topics, there's no videos, right? I haven't seen any video to me.
There's
right?
a lot less right now in the personal finance topics. I think the credit reports has one. There's a couple more for budgeting that have one.
Okay.
And again, over the course of the next semester or so, we are recording more of these and adding in. Basically every week or two, we sit down and write a script and record the video to go along with it.
Okay. That's good, yeah. That's it.
So yeah, and I see Basma just asked regarding the personal finance. Yes, the personal finance activities are available to all professors, but you're only going to see them when you go to create an assignment if your class is a personal finance class. So when you go to the register new class here, you'll need to choose personal finance as your class subject. If you choose any of these other topics, you're not going to see the personal finance topics, but you will see some activities for derivatives classes, things like articles talking about options and making options trades and talking about futures and things like that. There's only about 10 or 12 of those for investments and derivatives classes. Personal finance is where the bulk of this educational content comes in.
Okay. Good.
Do we have any other questions?
In creating assignments, if I create, let's say, 10 of them, will students see all 10, or will they only populate based on dates that I preset?
Yeah, they'll only populate based on the dates that you set. So
Okay, perfect.
they'll start to appear on this start date, and they will no longer appear after this end date.
Okay.
Basma asks, can students use the same account for both personal finance and portfolio investments? Your class includes both topics. Yes, basically all you would do is you create one class here. If it's the same students in the same class, you just create one class and set the just make sure you choose personal finance as the class subject at the first step there. If you don't choose personal finance, basically you won't have access to all of the these activities here. The reason we did it that way was basically to make it so portfolio management and derivatives classes didn't get bogged down with all this stuff, because this takes up the vast majority of the assignments page when there actually is quite a lot here for just regular portfolio management and investments classes. We didn't want that to be a distraction. Okay, if there are no more questions, I think I will call the meeting here. This has been recorded the whole time, so I will be sharing Tom and I will be sharing the recording of this webinar. Thank you for everybody for attending. I was glad to speak with you. If you have any feedback on anything you've seen, just let us know, because I listed those 10 or 12 things that we've added this semester. All of those come from professor feedback. So if you think something should be there that isn't, let us know, and it probably will get on our list of things for next semester.
Kevin, thank you for conducting such a thorough webinar. And professors, thank you for attending today's webinar. And there is a recording available that we can post that you can request if you'd like to hear it again. So on behalf of StockTrak.com and all of us here, Kevin, professors, thank you very much.
All right, and have a great afternoon.